there's another D&D property that is not doing so well. And this one, BB, I think hits close to home for you, because you were the one who actually introduced me to this game. I didn't play it, but I did see you and Grecky play it. Redbeard Flynn, who's a friend of ours, who's a YouTube partner, did a YouTube video on it. And I know that Mr. Guybrush, who's also a friend of ours and, Twitch streamer, streamed it as well. And we've had members of our community play the game. And what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking, of course, about Dark and Darker. And it just gets darker each time we look into...
Literally.
Each time we look up this Dark and Darker, it just gets darker. So, yeah, you want to give us a rundown of what's going on with Dark and Darker?
Yeah, basically this game was doing, it was like some hot pancakes fresh off the pan when it came out, because it was one of the most popular games on Steam. There was multiple alpha tests that were happening, which I was part of. That and like I said, a bunch of community members were, and the game was just simple, which was surprising, right? Because a lot of times simple games may not have good mechanics or whatever it is, but it was just a simple combat, simple mechanics. Game was great. Loved playing it with friends, even solo, which I usually just play co-op games nowadays, or multiplayer with friends, right? But even playing this PvE type game solo was pretty fun. And started to have a pretty good community as well, behind it. There's pretty good people in there, and everything. But no, basically, Dark and Darker, it's received a DMCA takedown, and it's much bigger than that now. That's what happened a few days ago. It was about March 27th when we heard the news. There is a article by IGN that was posted, basically saying Steam did remove the game. It was a DMCA takedown from Nexon, which is a huge company.
Yeah.
And there's been just a chain of events happening. I mean, it started with the whole DMCA thing getting taken down, went all the way to Korean officials doing a raid, and for possible stolen codes, right? Allegedly, that's what
all of it is allegedly.
Yeah, everything is allegedly at the moment. But Iron Mace, which is the head developer of this, said there was a 20 person, which is filled with about 20. I think person team or so, which are made up. Which this is why it's so you gotta kind of take it with a grain of salt, right? And it's all you have to research the official things. And we're all going based off articles that have already been published and confirmed here. But they were all Nexon. Well, not all of them, but some of them were former Nexon employees. So it makes it a little hard to be oh well. That is it a coincidence? Is it not? Right. But in the raid that they did, it was just from the Iron Man statement was a quick process, and they found basically nothing.
Yeah.
But it's just it kind of sucks. It sucks in different ways, I think, because it's not necessarily of oh no, this game it's not gonna come out. It may not come out, right? But it's also kind of did people really steal codes? I don't know, right? That's shitty. Or is this more of big corp trying to bully independent company, right? Developers, it's just so much going on. And
right.
So there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah, so I have open here a Eurogamer article. Right now, Iron Mace has set up a GoFundMe. Their target is $500,000. They've raised $46,000 of it. It was
and it got taken down recently.
Yeah, it got deleted.
Apparently it wasn't even started by, or they didn't actually approve it. It was started by one of the employees. There, it's just so much going on that is so confusing, right? It's a little confusing, and it's just that you don't know what's real, what's not. It's all over the place at this point.
Exactly, and I don't know. Look, I'm not a. This isn't my kind of game, right? This is Escape from Tarkov meets Wizards, which is it's never my kind of game, right? Like it's never been my kind of thing. So like I enjoy watching it, but it wasn't something I played. But when I heard it and looked into it, it was just like, whoa, this is like a Who Shot John right
Yeah.
now, and it's like all of this is
Yeah.
allegedly.
Yeah.
And this is the core of the issue. So it says this is from the Eurogamer article titled Dark and Darker legal dispute gets more and more confusing after GoFundMe campaign is deleted. If you want to find it, it literally is the first article you find when you Google Dark and Darker. But at the bottom, it gives a synopsis of what is at the root of this allegation, and all of this is alleged. But it says back in August of 2021, a former Nexon employee was allegedly reported for leaking company data and assets while they were working from home during the COVID-19 pandemic. This employee, known as Leader A, was heading up development of a project dubbed P3. However, after allegedly being caught leaking, quote, thousands of the project's files, Leader A was fired from Nexon. Since then, half of the 20-person P3 team quit Nexon and joined Iron Mace to work on Dark and Darker. This included the developer allegedly caught and subsequently fired for leaking the P3 files. There have since been claims that P3 was used as a prototype for Dark and Darker. And that's when Nexon served Iron Mace with the DMCA, and that's when all of this happened and it went up. The thing with me is, like, I know that Nexon, from my understanding, and these are South Korean developers, if I'm not mistaken. From what I understand, people don't have a lot of sympathy for Nexon. Like, they seem to be like the E3 of whatever industry they're in. I mean, obviously gaming, but like whatever niche gaming side they're in. So they seem to be the E3 of that. And so people don't have a lot of sympathy for them. And, it's kind of like you want to root, or it seems like people want to root for the small studio.
I mean, yeah. That's what I was saying at first too. Exactly. I was saying the same thing. I was like, oh, is this gonna be one of those, like, small dev trying to, escape from the, like, big corpo trying to take over or whatever, right? It's like what they basically are trying to, or what, a lot of people are looking at it as, right? Where it's like, because of Nexon not being so backed up here.
Apparently, the Dark and Darker devs tried to use chatbot GPT in a bid to prove that they didn't steal code. I don't know how they tried to do that. I'm assuming they had chatbot write a statement for. But this is what I'm saying. Like, it's like you have what you hope is the case. Right? You hope that, look, it's just a coincidence. Yeah, because there's a lot of these Escape from Tarkov-like games, because I think you and Greg were playing one, a space version, and then now there's this Wizards version, and I think there's another version of some sort coming out. Like, there's all of these kinds of Escape from Tarkov-light things. So you would hope that, like, hey, somebody at Nexon had the idea, and then independently somebody at Iron Mace said, you know what, these Tarkov things are taking off, and let's do a fantasy version, right? Like, and it just so happened to be coincidentally, the same thing. But Nexon, in my opinion, Nexon could play the trump card and show what P3 was. Because if they show P3, and then it's essentially Dark and Darker, then to me that's checkmate, in my opinion. Because then it's like, okay.
I mean, it could be. The thing is, like, they had screenshots, right, of P3. Like, there were screenshots out there for P3, and if you compare them, they're pretty identical, right? Like, maybe different, like, textures or something like that, right? But, like, at least, like, gameplay wise, like, the way it looked pretty similar.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, like, if a game looks similar to another one, I mean, what doesn't nowadays, right? There's so many games out there that, like, they look like copy pasta at this point. But the thing is, like, I think what changes this here is, like, the alleged, like, codes. Like, if you're actually stealing codes from another company, no matter if you're a shitty ass company or like a huge company, that's just bad. That's just wrong. So it's like, that's the part where it's like it gets iffy there. If they're protecting themselves, trying to, like, either way it goes, like, them making the Nexon making the claim of, like, oh, they stole our codes, and the other one's saying, no, we didn't. This is original code. I mean, that's gonna be the part where I think they're gonna kind of have to. Well, that's the part they're emphasizing on, right? Like, they're trying to figure out if that is what happened.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, that's where it's gonna be. It's gonna be tricky. I don't know how they can prove it. You know, like, because like, I don't know crap about game development. So like, I don't know if there's
Yeah,
like,
same. I have no idea what like how that even works, you know?
yeah,
So all I know is like once this comes to light and like they finish with everything, but it just feels like the more you like read about this, because the news about this is kind of like coming out as we go, you know,
yeah.
like it's
It's
still
April
pretty
3rd
fresh.
right now.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's still coming out, like more news is coming out about this, and it just doesn't seem like there's any like good news, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
at least for both sides too, because it's just kind of like it looks like it's gonna go nowhere. And as a gamer, you know, it sucks that they're going through this, because then now we probably won't, like, if this goes how most people think it will go to, where it's like they settle whatever and it just gotta scrap it, we probably won't get a Dark and Darker, and we won't get a P3. Like it'll just be like trashed, like it will just be
yeah.
binned.
And I think even by some, let's say the unexpected happens and Iron Mace is able to prove that it's not stolen code, and they're able to keep going with their game, and Dark and Darker does come out, and all of that. It's like it's got that negative PR to it, and now
Yeah, yeah, I get you. Yeah.
it's got a hole to dig itself out of. And then here's the thing: if they do settle, like everybody seems to expect they will, and everything like that, then it's going to be a matter of what happens to Iron Mace itself? Does that studio continue? And then what happens to their next game? Like, people are going to be like, oh, this is the studio that got that fishy, you know, like they,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
exactly.
reputation is something you can't get back. And, you know, it's a shame because there is no real great outcome. Either a promising young studio basically cut
Hmm.
corners,
Yeah.
or, you know, a larger studio got butt hurt that a game was similar to one of their prototypes, and, you know,
Basically,
basically
right? Yeah.
crushed a smaller studio. So it's like there's nobody's gonna come out of this. It's like when shit hits the fan, everybody gets
Hmm.
dirty, you know. And
And I think what makes this a lot bigger than like other, because I mean this, I'm sure this happens like, you know,
but yeah,
within the
corporate
industry, right?
espionage is a thing.
Yeah, like I just feel like this happens, you know, with other developers or games or whatever. But I think what makes this big is the fact that there was already people playing this, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like they already had, whether it was an alpha or whatever, right, like a playtest. People played the game, so it's
Yeah.
not like if this was like announced and like, oh, like, you know, doing an announcement trailer and then they're coming out and being like, hey, wait a minute, that looks like my game, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that's why it makes it kind of weird, because it's like, okay, so they did the DMCA, and then now, but after all these playtests and everything were happening, could be they were, I don't know, researching it to confirm with themselves or whatever. But that's what makes it bigger, because it's like so many people, like thousands of people were playing this game. I mean,
Yeah.
myself included. You know, I don't think I streamed it, but I was in few streams of this game being played. So it's like, you know,
No.
it was such a big like hit before he was even actually released, which is like, you know, it was an alpha. It wasn't even early access. It was just an alpha, you know.
There is a on the BB&J channel, I believe. Isn't there a BB&J plays where you
Oh,
go
there, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
where you
there
play?
is an actual
Uh,
video on that. Yeah.
yeah. So like, that's the thing. It released, people played it, and worst of all for this situation, not in general, but worst of all for this situation, it was popular. People liked it. People enjoyed it. So it's another situation. Like, I believe in, you know, if it's a stolen code situation, that to me is, you know, the worst of the worst. Like, I believe in proprietary protections. Like, I don't believe that people should be able to steal other people's ideas and work and, you know, things like that.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
if it's one of that, then Iron Mace could piss up a rope. But it's, at the end of the day, gamers are the ones that get hurt. And I feel like, you know, harking back to what we said earlier about gaming culture now, where it's like, oh, let's release, you know,
Exactly.
broken
Yep.
games and fix later. You know, we've seen a bit of an indie boom in gaming, because, like, you know, you have your phasmophobias, you have your other games that take off, that are pretty much indie made, indie developed, and, you know, the Among Uses of the world, and things like that, where it's just like, I mean, hell, even Crab Game that we played, which isn't like one of the more
Yeah.
popular games. It was one guy by himself making that
Yeah.
game, you know, and it's like
Yeah.
you get a lot of games like that that have taken off and that have done really well, and now, you know, here was one that seemed like, oh, here's the next sort of indie darling, if you will, and now it's like, mm, is this now people are gonna be like, oh, I feel like the next indie game that really takes off, people are gonna look at it suspiciously. For rightly or wrongly, I'm not saying that they should, but I get the sense that, you know, people are people and they're just gonna be like, oh well, is this an actual thing or is this a Iron Mace thing? And people are gonna what's gonna end up happening is people are gonna wait. People are gonna just like, I'm not gonna get into an alpha because I don't want to get my heart broken like I did with Dark and Darker. You know, I don't want to end up like I did with you know, really loving a game and then getting it taken down. Because I know a lot of people who played this game and who really liked it, who are really in pain and who are sort of suffering in the sense of like as a gamer because you know it was taken from them, and that sucks.
Oh, definitely. It does suck. That's at the end of the day, for us, the people who played it or whoever was excited for it, it's like, what do we do now? Like we wait.